This is Mike. I'm just doing a quick, this is mostly for Omnisphere folks who want to use a Novation 61 SL MkIII to map controls into Omnisphere. It works great. I'm going to show you how. I've got a pre-mapped one, but I'll show you how I made it. It's really simple. Drag this one in, pre-mapped. And what you'll see, there's our Omnisphere running inside of Complete Control. So for those of you who are Omnisphere fans and Complete Control fans and don't know about this, this is how you do that. Lance Soundlabs has these great mappings for your non-Native Instruments plugins into Complete Control. So one of the big ones that Jason has done is Omnisphere. It's a whopper. There it is. You got to have that. Otherwise this won't work. It's really cheap. It's like, I don't know, $15 or $20. Worth every penny. He's mapped a bajillions of things, so go for it. Anyway, so that's how this is happening. That our old friend Omnisphere is running inside of Complete Control with all of the Omnisphere mappings. So here are all the familiar sub-banks, hardware library if you're up to date. But you know, all that stuff, normal Omnisphere stuff, but mapped into Complete Control. And the way that you get at the actual controls is by bringing up these buttons, and then what you can see is that Jason has mapped he's got all these banks. I mean, look at this huge mapping job that he's done. So you can control the master volume, you can control A level, B level. You know, all this isn't that big news, except that it's pretty hard to manage all this. I mean, look at all these different kinds of mappings he's done. So, you know, you want to go to the orb and you want to fool around with the orb, fine. Go there. You want to turn it on and off, you can do that. So this all has the possibility of coming out to controls in your DAW. And it works. And this is how. So if we look in the instrument rack and then we configure it, we can see our old friends configuring the master stuff. So let me go back to the master stuff, and you can see the familiar buttons: volume, A level. Now what but the trick here is that you can put them in any order you want. So I don't have them the way Jason has them laid out. I have them laid out the way I want to use them. And what I want to be able to do is see them like this on my Novation keyboard, which is the way they look right now. And so it's sort of a combination of Omnisphere, Jason's mappings, Lance Soundlabs mappings, and a Novation SL MkIII. And these come in banks. So this is just the first bank. I'm just going to show the first bank, but you can have 8. So you've got lots of banks possible there. And you can put them in any order you want. And here's a puzzler. If you open up your Novation and it looks like this, and you're going, but wait, where did all those go? Don't forget that if you take a look at the actual instrument rack, then what you're seeing in the Novation keyboard is the macros the 8 macros in the instrument rack. And if you had mapped controls to the macros, that's where they'd show up, but you only get 8. You don't get all that good bank stuff because the macros, there's only 8 macros in an instrument rack. So by going down a level and not paying attention to the macros in the instrument rack, but actually going into the how did I get all that in there? There we go. God. Going actually into the instrument, the complete control instrument, not the rack, but the instrument itself. That's how these will show up like that. How do you get those in there? Okay, here's how. So let's configure this. Let's get rid of all these so that we're starting from scratch. So this is probably the way it would look at the starting point. You'd open it up, there wouldn't be anything there, or there'd be something, some goofy thing that you don't want. You hit configure, you bring in the panel that you want to add. Let's see if I can squeeze this in here. And you start touching control. So let's just replicate the one I had. So you'd put volume in, and then what did I have in there? Then I put the filter in on the first 2 buttons, and I put the rest of the filtering, resonance, and glide on those first 2. And then on the second pair, I put the A level, and I put the filter cutoff for the A level, because those are the 2 things that I use the most. And then I go back to master, and I do the B level and the filtering for B cutoff. And now I have a little macro, set of macros mapped like that to complete control. Saved off in this. You can't see this because I haven't got double video, but I'm twisting knobs on the keyboard now, and things are behaving as they should, having just built this from scratch. So that's the nuts and bolts of it. The only tricky bit is that the hardware macros for Omnisphere are laid out a little bit different. So let's grab some sort of hardware, and now you can see that the knobs are in a different order. And what you can also see is that I think, yeah, there's more of them, because with the hardware macros, now we've got even more stuff mapped by Jason. And so this is why you've got to, you got to do something, and why 8 isn't enough, and why the Novation keyboard is really helpful. So in this particular case, you can see now that things look a little goofy down here, and that's because the complete controls that have been mapped to this preset don't match the mapping that I did for the first generation. And so what you have to do in this, so here's one where I've pre-mapped it. We'll get rid of this rascal and bring this one in instead, and you'll see what's going on. So now there's Omnisphere. Bring up the controls. There they are. You just have to trust me on this, but this is the way the keyboard looks now. So I've laid it out differently. Now I've got all 4 levels on the front page, along with volume cutoff and some filter stuff. So it's just ever so slightly different. But again, if you don't like it, don't lay it out that way. It's really easy to change, and it's the same deal. You just open this up and configure it and put things in. Ta-da! That's my little Scratchpad post.